So now we are finally going to discuss the three different forms of linear equations. And the three are slope-intercept form, point-slope form, and standard form. And I already went over slope-intercept form in the past 2 or 3 videos, so we're just going to touch on it briefly. So slope-intercept, and that's going to be y equals mx plus b, with m being the slope, b being the y-intercept, x being the x-coordinate, and y being the y-coordinate. Next, we're going to look at point-slope form. So, point-slope form is actually derived from the slope formula, which we went over in the last video. And if you watched that, you would know that the way to find or calculate slope is y equals delta y, or not y, sorry. I meant m, because m is the variable that's used to find or resemble slope, right? So delta y over delta x. And if we were to make a quick graph here, so let me get out my ruler. Make a nice graph. Oh no. Alright, forget the ruler. So if we were to have a graph here, it looks something like that. And say our line looked like that. Imagine that was a straight line. Okay. So say we had 2 points on this line, right? And one of them had the coordinates a, b, and the other had the coordinates, we'll say x, y, right? Now, instead of putting delta y and delta x, we can now say, although this is much simpler, I'm going to say now we'll have, actually, let me do this. M equals, and the change in y is going to be obviously the difference in y coordinates, so it's going to be y minus b y minus b, right? And then in the denominator, we're going to have the change in x, so it's going to be x minus a. Okay. So from this, we can now derive the point slope form. And to do that, all you have to do is multiply each side by x minus a. So you get rid of it on this side in the denominator. And on this side, it's going to become the coefficient of m. Or m will become the coefficient of it. It's just going to, they're going to be multiplied, you know what I mean? So if we rewrite it to make it simpler, it would be m times x minus a equals y minus b, right? And this is essentially point slope form. Let's underline it in yellow or something. This right here is point slope form, and it is called point slope form because it uses the slope and one point to demonstrate that they are equal to each other. So you might wonder, why would I ever use point slope form when I already have a simple form like slope-intercept. And the reason why slope-intercept is way more common is because you would use it in a lot more, or it's easier to use in a lot more scenarios than it is to use in point-slope form. And also, who wants to memorize 3 different complex formulas? We're going to get into standard form afterwards. But the advantage that point slope form has over slope intercept form is when you're given 1 point and the slope of a line, and it asks you to figure out information like the y-intercept of that line or the x-intercept of that line, and you need to say plot that line, right? Also, you can take this and you can convert it into slope intercept form. I'm going to show you how to do that after we look at an example. So say we had a slope of 1, right? And our point was AB was like, we'll say 2, 3. Actually, we'll make the slope 2. Just make it a little more difficult. So plugging these numbers into our I don't even know why I made that yellow. I already have a yellow pen right here. But plugging these numbers into our equation, our point slope form equation, we get 2 times x minus, what is it? X minus 2, yeah, equals 3, or sorry, y minus 3. And now, if we were to make this into slope-intercept form, we see that we need y on one side and everything else basically on the other side. So we could start by adding 3 on both sides. Plus 3. On this side, we could do plus 3. And we get this eliminated. Y equals 2 times x minus 2 plus 3. Okay? Now the next step is just distributing everything and adding everything together. And then after we do that, we'll get y equals 2x minus 4 plus 3. And negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. So I'm just going to save us a step there. Right, y equals 2x minus 1. So already we have gotten our slope-intercept form from our point-slope form. So that is how you convert them. That shows you that you can just get one from the other. Right? But the interesting thing here is that we were able to find the y-intercept and the entire equation to graph the line using only 1 point and the slope, versus if we needed 2 points rather to get something like a slope-intercept form. So that is the situation where a point-slope form would be advantageous if you had the slope of the line and 1 point. Thus why it's called point-slope form. Now the next form that we're going to get into is the standard form. And the standard form really focuses on getting you your intercepts. You'll see what I mean by this in a second once I write the actual form. So we're going to put A, and in green we will put our coordinates x plus by, or actually I'll do this in blue. Y equals, and C will do in yellow. Okay, so this right here is essentially our standard form. As you may tell, you could also convert this into slope-intercept form by subtracting minus ax both sides and then dividing by b. But right now what we're going to do is sort of make an example, and then we're going to see how we can get our intercepts from that. So before I make that example, I'm going to draw us another graph. So right here, horrible graph. But yeah, that's our graph. And now what we're gonna do is put in values for a, b, and c. So we'll say our equation can be 9x plus 16y. Why not? And we'll say that is equal to let's say 72. Now, in order to find the x and y intercepts, it becomes very easy. You just set one of the coordinates equal to 0 to find the other one's intercept, and then after doing that, you can solve for that coordinate. So, say we wanted to find the y-intercept. The y-intercept is whenever x is equal to 0, or when the line crosses the y-axis, right? So first we can set x to 0, and after setting x to 0, it becomes 9 times 0 equals 0, so that becomes eliminated. So we're left with just 16y equals 72, right? And now what we can do is solve for y, so divide both sides by 16, and you get y equals 72 divided by 16, which you can simplify. Greatest common factor would be 8. So 72 divided by 8 is 9. 9. And 16 divided by 8 would be 2. So now we see that our y-intercept in this case would be at 4.5. So 4.5, we'll say, is like there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now, in order to find our x-intercept, we could do the same thing, but to the y-coordinate. So we set y equal to 0, and then we are left with 9x equals 72. 9. That is a really bad 9. 9x equals 72. Solve for x, divide both sides by 9, and you get x equals 8. Because 72 divided by 9 is 8. So given that our x-intercept is at 8, we could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now that we have 2 points, our x and y-intercept, we can easily graph the line. Let me do this in green. So the advantage of a standard form is to find both of your intercepts, and once you find both of your intercepts, you can easily start to graph your line because you only need 2 points to graph a line. So yeah, these are essentially the 3 forms of linear equations that you're going to see, and you'll notice that you can convert each one into the other. So you can convert point slope form into slope intercept form. You can't really convert slope intercept form into point slope form because of things like x minus a and y minus b that you can't really derive from that. But you can get standard form into slope intercept form. I think you could get point slope form into standard form as well. Yeah, you could. And yeah, so these are basically the 3 forms. To review once again, the advantages of each is with slope intercept, you know the slope and you know the y-intercept. With point slope form, you can graph a line having only 1 point and the slope of that line. And for standard form, you can immediately know what is the x-intercept and what is the y-intercept, and then you can graph your line based on that. So I hope you found this video helpful, and thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.